Everyone,
Good
the floor
evening.
is yours.
Okay, please all rise.
This conference will now be recorded.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the Orangetown Planning Board meeting of, February 10th is now in session. First agenda, roll call of members. Thomas Warren here. Mr. Young. I know Mr. Young was here. I don't know if you here. I see him. Mr. Young is here. Mr. Mandel.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Sweeney. I see he's gone. Okay, he was here. He's gone. Mr. Dell? No, Mr. Dell. Okay, Mr. Andrews?
Here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCory?
Here.
Okay, and I see Mr. Sweeney's here. Okay, Mr. Bond? Okay, no, Mr. Bond. Okay, we have a quorum. I'm going to take one item out of order. The Chazinski subdivision plan, which is PB 21-07. It's a 2-minute thing. I just want to get this done and then we can move on. So is anybody here? I think Jay, are you doing that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Could you give us an explanation, Jay?
Yes. We are very close. The attorney has prepared the stormwater covenant, and the road widening deed took a little bit of time because he had to get the release from the bank. And the last thing is that we're just waiting for Ken DeGennaro's sign off. But I did speak with him last week, and he promised he'd have it shortly. So we should be in good shape very shortly.
Okay, thank you. Let me go through the consultant's reports. Jane Slavin, February 8th, has one item. Office of Planning Board, Zoning and Planning Administration has no further comments regarding this extension. Bruce Peters, dated February 9th. This department has no objection to the request for 2 90-day extensions. And I have a narrative from Jay Greenwell, dated January 19th, of the work that has been done and the reason for the extension. Okay. Mr. Young, any questions or comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm fine.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mandel, questions or comments?
No questions or comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Sweeney, questions or comments? Mr. Sweeney, your mic is off. Mr. Sweeney, your mic is off. Do you have any questions or comments on this application? Maybe you can't hear me. I don't know. Mr. Sweeney, can you hear me? Oh, there you are. Okay, do you have any questions?
No comments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dell? No, Mr. Dell yet. Okay, Mr. Andrews?
No questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCory?
No objections to the 90-day extension.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody from the public have any questions or comments on this?
Move the public portion is closed.
Okay, I think that was Mr. Mandel. Do I have a second? Mr. Sweeney, second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Okay, no opposition. Jay, you got your 2 90-day extensions.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Good night. Have a good one.
All right, Jay.
Okay, next order is PB 21-05, 70 Bradley Hill Road Site Improvement Plan. It's here for a final site plan review. Is anybody here for that? Okay, Mr. Mendel. Oh, we have quite a few places. Okay, who's going to do the presentation?
Yes, me, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Vasquez from Onyx Equities. Just a point of order. would you like us to do our brief presentation first, or is your consultant from AKRF going to present first? I think I saw an email from Cheryl that said she's going to present as well, so I don't want to step on any toes there.
No, I would like you to go first, and then we will have them.
Okay, we have a brief presentation, if that's okay with the board. I think Ms. Vasquez needs permission to present her screen, please. Thank you.
Okay, she's ready.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. My name is Seth Mandelbaum. I'm a partner with the law firm of McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout. Very pleased to be here once again on behalf of our clients, Onyx Management, Onyx Management Group, which manages the now Hudson Crossing property, formerly the Bradley Corporate Park. Onyx purchased this property in mid 2019 and has really been working very hard to bring in some new quality tenants, as well as to upgrade the overall feel and maintenance of the park. And we hope that the community has started to notice those improvements. It's something Onyx has spent a lot of time and effort and money on. And this application is an important piece of that puzzle. As you may recall, we're here on behalf of Onyx for their proposed tenant, UPS, United Parcel Service, at 700 and 800 Bradley Hill Road. It is on your agenda as two separate items since they are two separate tax lots. They're both owned by LLCs that are related entities to Onyx Equities and Onyx Management. And the proposed use is for UPS to reuse an existing warehouse facility at 700 Bradley Hill Road with really no changes to the footprint of just improvements to the site, as you'll hear from Nicole in a few minutes. We can go to the next slide, please. With me this evening, as I mentioned, are Nicole Vasquez and Matt Flath from Onyx Equities, Franz Lockey from Sessi Consulting Engineers, our civil engineer, Brian DiBarbieri from Barbieri Architects, and Ron Reinman from Mazer Consulting, who's our traffic consultant. Next slide, please. So just a little update since the last time we saw you before Thanksgiving. You may recall on November 12th, 2020, this board adopted a negative declaration as the lead agency under SECRA, finding no significant environmental impacts with the project, granted preliminary site plan, and sent us on our way to ACABOR and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Pleased to report that on December 3rd, ACABOR granted approval for the minor architectural improvements to the existing building. And on January 6th, 2021, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted performance standards approval, which is required in this zoning district for the warehouse use. You can go to the next slide. At this point, I'll hand it over to Ms. Vasquez to briefly take you through some of the slides. They're very similar to what you saw back in November, but we'll go through them quickly just to refresh everyone's memory as to the scope and location of the project. Nicole?
Thank you, Seth. Again, my name is Nicole Vasquez. I'm with Onyx Equities. The two applications before you are for properties within the Hudson Crossing Industrial Park. The 700 Bradley property is improved with a commercial warehouse building currently occupied by Demand Motorsports and Oak Beverages. Demand Motorsports will remain as a tenant in the facility. Oak Beverages will be vacating, and UPS will be reletting part of the spaces that Oak currently occupies, as well as some of the vacancies that currently exist in the building. 800 Bradley Hill Road, currently occupied by Oak, is really only part of this application because, as you can see in the grayed out area here, the owner of 800 Bradley Hill Road will be granting an access and parking easement to the owner of 700 Bradley Hill Road, the parking easement to the benefit of UPS. This slide also shows the existing conditions of the site. The application primarily proposes milling and paving and restriping. with a few ancillary modifications to the building, which we'll discuss in just a moment. This slide shows the distance of the 700 Bradley Hill Road, the building UPS will occupy, to the nearest residential districts, with the nearest district boundary line approximately 430 feet from the boundary of the 700 Bradley Hill Road building. Similar data points to the south of the building and out to the east. Also important to note that the building is across the CSX rail line and across the 200 Orangetown parking lot before you get to that first residential district property line. As you can see here, these are the proposed striping patterns for both of the properties. The area in gray is the parking and access easement I spoke about a moment ago. In these clouded areas, we took into consideration AKRF's recommendations for some of the improvements, better clearance in the overhead door drive-in lanes into the 700 Bradley Hill Road building. We made some modifications down in the southern corner here to allow for better maneuverability of the trucks into the existing loading docks. And again, just some changes of swapping of spaces to account for the changes proposed by AKRF, which I'm sure you will hear about in just a moment. This is the western elevation of the building. These are the two doors that UPS will be using for ingress and egress from the building with their brown back struts. And this is just a rendering of what the proposed improvements would look like once implemented. Aside from the milling and paving, the other modifications we're proposing are removing a surface-mounted fuel tank, a site access gate, an extension to the rail spur on Bradley Hill Road, and replacement of the existing loading dock doors on the southern side of the building. These are the 8 existing loading dock doors UPS will be using. They're currently used by the existing tenant. No changes, no additions or subtractions of loading dock doors, just widening of the openings for UPS's use. And here is a rendering. Well, no, first a existing condition picture of the lot and the rendering underneath showing the proposed changes once they're implemented as well. And that is it.
Thank you, Nicole. So, Chairman, essentially that is our overview. Of course, we're happy to answer any questions that the board or the public might have this evening. And we would ask the board to consider granting final site plan approval this evening at the end of the public portion of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from 700 Bradley wishes to speak on this? No? Okay, so we'll go on to the consultants' reports. Jane Slavin, February 8th, for 700 Bradley Hill Road. She has one comment. Okay, Bruce Peters, February 8th, has 2 comments, which I want to read in, and we're going to need some legal clarification on this. Number 1, contrary to the applicant attorney's letter of 1/7/21, page 2, paragraph 3, it is not typical for applicants to wait until receiving final approval to address comments from this department, nor is it typical for this department or the planning board to allow an applicant to ignore comments made at a preliminary stage until after they receive final approval. The comments this department provides at the preliminary stage addresses the actual viability of the project as initially submitted. For example, our comment number 1 from our letter dated 11-10/20 asked the applicant proven written legal documentation that the applicant has legal ability to work on a neighboring property. How can the applicant be given final approval if the applicant does not yet not yet to prove the legal ability to construct the project as presented. This department requests that its comments be addressed before receiving final approval, not a condition of final approval. Mr. Deputy Town Attorney, can I have some legalese on this, please?
Yes, normally I would agree with Bruce, but in this case, both properties, I believe, are owned by technically different entities, but both entities are owned by the same entity or the same person. Throughout this process, I've seen various documentation relating to this, and today I received a letter basically that granted authority for them to do what needs to be done. So I am satisfied that they've satisfied that requirement. So in other words, I don't have any doubt that they have legal authority to do the work on the neighboring property. So I think that comment is satisfied.
Thank you, sir. Let me read the second. The applicant still needs to comply with PB decision 20-44, conditions 10. Written proof to the satisfaction of the town attorney's office. Okay, we resolved that. All existing drainage and sanitary infrastructure facilities on both 700 and 800 Corporate Drive shall be shown on the plans. The terminus for all lines shall be determined and shown on the drawings, including 18-inch RCP and an 8-inch YVP on 800 Corporate Drive. 12, the existing sanitary building connection shall be shown on the plans. 13, all proposed SESC features shall be shown in their proposed location on the SESC drawing. SESC features needed around proposed pavement removal on the neighboring lot to the east. 15, drawing E-1 shall be revised to show the actual location of all existing easements. Some are listed as approximate. This is not equitable. Also, the meets and bounds, filing information, and ownership of all the existing easements shall be given on a plan. Given the number of easements and the applicant's engineering, given the number of your easements, the applicant's engineering shall consider adding a table listing all easements and their associated information. Lastly, any and all proposed crossed easements for drainage, sanitary, and access shall be included on the plan.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to respond to the second comment at the appropriate time, please, whether it's...
If you want, you can do it right now, because I think as we go through with the board members may have some questions pertaining to this. So
yeah,
now go ahead.
I appreciate that. And I did discuss this with Mr. Picola today, as well as the other comment that he mentioned. And our engineer, our civil engineer, has been in conversation with the town engineer since the fall. And I think there was perhaps some misunderstanding on our part, or misinterpretation, or just the miscommunication. But I think the thing to focus on here are twofold. One, as you just heard, and as we've told you before, both properties are owned by the same parent company. So as far as easements, of course, we provided a proposed easement early on for the parking and access, vehicular access, which will be finalized as required by your code for the parking on an adjacent site. But as far as the underground utility lines they're talking about in this memo, the surveyor's been working on that. Obviously, there's snow on the ground, and it's been very difficult to locate some of these very not so new easement lines that are not proposed to be changed at all. So we would ask that the board do consider making those conditions of final site plan, which really is on us to finish those before we can get any permits. And they're being worked on. They're just not complete yet, and they're really nothing is changing with respect to those underground utilities. As you heard, there's just a sprucing up of the site and the pavement. And I would also note that in November, Brooker Engineering signed off on the drainage, your outside consultant, which of course is usually the prime engineering issue on most applications. And in this application, our civil engineer, again, worked with the town engineer and provided proof that there was no net increase in impervious, which involves some removal of pavement and addition of green lawn to spruce up the project. So for all those reasons, and I understand there may be a general policy on this. I think on this particular application, it was our understanding that these types of items where a surveyor is showing exact meets and bounds, and we are showing the easements, this just needs to be pinned down to final meets and bounds, that we would ask that you consider making that a condition prior to issuance of a building permit, which means we can't do any work, of course, until we meet those conditions. So I just want to make sure I had an opportunity to respond to that comment to the board and ask for your consideration on that point.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask either Rick or Jane right now. If I don't know what the board wants to do, but I understand what Bruce Peters is asking. Is there any legal issues with either one of these conditions if they were to be made?
There is no legal issue with that. This board, again, Bruce is speaking as a town employee making recommendations. This board has the final determination of whether to give final tonight or not. You're not bound by Bruce's statements. Let me also comment on Bruce. I think Bruce is one of the best engineers in the county or maybe the state. He really does look out for the town's interest. I did speak about this specific matter with Mr. Mandelbaum, and I happen to agree with the applicant on this case. Bruce's point is what happens if those plans reflect something that would require a change in the plan. And I mentioned that to Mr. Mandelbaum, and he said, well, then we'll have to come back. They obviously can't go forward if that's the case. And I do know that this board has in the past in similar situations granted conditional approval. My reading of Bruce's letter is kind of that Bruce took his hackles at, was a little bit upset perhaps that he was being lectured on what this board usually does. And I think perhaps Bruce was maybe showing a little bit of attitude. But that being said, this board does have absolute authority to grant final if they think it's appropriate. That being said, if the board thinks that it needs to see that information on the plans, that's also within its purview. So did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Jane, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with Rick's assessment.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Booker Engineering, November 10th. The applicant has provided significant information to demonstrate that there are no potential significant adverse impacts with respect to drainage that require mitigation. We therefore recommend that 700 Bradley Hill Road site plan approval and 800 Bradley Hill Road site plan be approved for drainage subject to no conditions. Okay. Rockland County Planning. Dated September 22nd, 2020. We are returning the enclosed applicant for UPS at Hudson Crossing 700 Bradley Hills Road, Blauvelt, which it appears to be before the planning board October 28th, because this parcel is outside the area of our jurisdiction. I also have a letter from Alfred Gaddy. I believe, yes, he's from Orange and Rockland Utilities. Dated January 21st. Based on the proposed site plan, the site layout provided, the proposed grade change may be in conflict with the existing services to the customer. The developer must follow all codes 753 when trenching near gas facilities, must contact O&R for relocation if the services are in conflict. And I have a letter dated January 27th, Rockland County Highway Department. They have no comments. I have the performance standards. Carol, did we get anything from New York State DOT?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the board for any questions or comments? Mr. Young, questions or comments?
I have concerns over Mr. Peters' letter as well, but I believe our attorney has resolved those issues and made me feel more at ease with this. I have no other comments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mandel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. First of all, I'm glad you included the oil water separators as requested in last meeting and having an updated traffic impact study. Now, can you clarify if there are 5 or 7 tractor trailers that arrive during the 4 a.m. to 8:30 a.m.? Page 3, number 6, parking lot states 5 in total, while page 2, number 3, build condition, paragraph 1 states indicates 7 trailers. You stated earlier in preload operations, you operate from 4 to 8:30. 5 tractor trailers will be dropped off at 4 p.m. and 2 drop-offs at 6:30 with 2 empties being removed. Can you tell me what the what the conflict is there?
Sure. Nicole, is that something that you would address or would Ron address that?
Sure. I think that's coming from the traffic study, Ron.
Yes, okay. So I'm not exactly sure, the different numbers that were just mentioned. I know during that morning hour, there's 5 tractor trailers. And then as part of their operation, they have 2 at the other hour where they just drop off trailers. And I guess just to put it really as easy to put it to bed would be our traffic projections and the table provided in the traffic study where all our analysis, was run from. That includes the workers, any ancillary trips, as well as any truck trips in those numbers. So all those tractor trailers at each of those specific hours are in our analysis, and the 5 that are referenced are that 4:30, period before the peaks.
And what about the 2 at 6:30? Is
Yeah,
that 2 additional ones?
Yeah, yes, it's 2 additional tractor trailers. That's correct. It's a different hour. So during any hour, the most you have are the 5 off peak, and then the additional 2 off peak. And I'll just clarify it one more time. All our traffic projections takes into consideration the tractor trailers, the box trucks, customers, as well as employees. So all those numbers are accounted for.
I understand that, but so the total number of tractor trailers for the day is going to be 7 then?
I believe so, yes.
Or are there any more coming in later in the day?
I believe it's 7, and maybe Nicole, do you have a?
Yep, sure. I have the breakdown of what was provided by UPS. So they have a total of really 6 to 7 trailers per day. 2 trailers arriving at 4 a.m. Those trailers are then picked up by tractors in the evening. 2 were then dropped off at 6 p.m. The 2 that are dropped off at 6 p.m. are picked up by tractors at 10 p.m. So their current projections, they may have been conservative and said 7, but it's really 6.
Okay, thank you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking at the plans, which the loading docks are going to be used during the early morning hours between 4 and 8:30? Is that the 8 loading docks on I think it's the south side of the building?
That's correct.
Behind the Mom Motors? Okay, that's the only
those are the only docks they have.
Yeah, they're being widened a little bit, Mr. Mandel.
Okay. All right. And the okay, all right. And regarding Department of Environmental Management and Engineering, they're number 1 and 2. I still, it's in my opinion, I know you answered it, but I think it sets a bad precedent if we start giving exceptions here and there especially to Bruce Peters' comments. So I have nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have to apologize because there's two other consultants' reports that I did not make note of. And I apologize. And I know that I know one lady's here anyway. One is from AKRE. It's dated, I actually have two of them. One is January 13th and one is January 29th. And I also have a consultant report from a SESI, which is a traffic study, impact study, which is dated January 28th. Do either of them, those engineers, wish to make any presentation? No, okay. Mr. Mandel, I just read them in now, so if you're interested in making any comments on either one of those or Mr. Young, please let me know. If not, we'll move on. But I'm apologize for not reading them in before. Mr. Mandel, anything?
Let me see. Hold on one second. No, not at this time. They answered the thing on the air quality regarding the adding additional scrubbers outside, which seems to make sense. And as far as the nothing further at this time. If there's something later on, I'll ask at that time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel. Mr. Young, do you have anything additional?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm fine.
Thank you very much. Let me continue. Mr. Sweeney, questions or comments?
Thank you. No, my main questions and comments were about Bruce Peters' document, and we kind of had that conversation. So I'll have no comments at this time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dell.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to re-echo the comments that our town attorney made about Bruce Peters. I think he's doing an excellent job and he's always looked out for us. I'm kind of concerned about going ahead with this, but given the circumstances, it may be a preferable way to handle this situation. It should be noted, of course, as was clearly demonstrated this time by the applicant, that this is basically a de facto campus situation. Its nearest residential neighborhood is about 430 some odd feet. And as such, some of the normal concerns don't really apply here. Mr. Mandel covered about almost all of my comments, as he usually does. So I'll re-echo everything that he said. Particularly, it's good to see the oil separators, etc. Now, in the AKRF letter dated January 13th, they made two recommendations. I would like to know if the applicant is willing to comply with those recommendations for the record.
Yes, Mr. Dell. We actually had a response. It's a little, that's why there's two AKRF memos. I don't know. I won't speak for AKRF, but I can tell you that from the applicant's perspective, we responded to the earlier January memo, and there was a final memo toward the end of January that I believe signed off on those responses. But I don't want to speak.
So the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you very much. I noticed we didn't hear anything from DOT on this application. And I certainly wish they would get their act together and respond to us. But that being said, it looks like everything else appears to be in order. And I have no further questions at this time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dell. Mr. Dell, in regard to your concerns on AKRF's January 13th letter, on their 29th letter, the bottom paragraph says, regards to the site plan, AKRF has reviewed the revised site plan, last revised January 28, 2020, and approves of the variation that have been included to address the comments of your January 13th letter memorandum. AKRF has no further site plan comments. So those two comments were addressed. Thank you, sir.
No, I understood that, Mr. Chairman. But again, as belt and suspenders approach, sometimes letters get misinterpreted or misplaced. but when the applicant says something in a public meeting, that's a little more definitive. And that's why I was being careful about that. But thank you very much for catching that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Andrews, questions or comments?
I have one question right now. You state that you're going to be widening the loading dock doors. Is there any particular reason for that? Is there going to be any structural changes to the building in widening those doors, or what?
Nicole, can you address that question, please?
Sure, yeah, the widening came as a request from UPS. It's just their standard door. The existing dimensions are a little old and fashioned. And we do have drawings from our architect showing the conditions that need to be met to widen those doors. And everything that needs to be followed to do that work.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCory.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought the biggest obstacle was going to be the legal easement issue, but I think that was cleared up tonight. And I just want to reiterate what Mr. Mandel says, is that, we get input from the experts in the field like Bruce Peters, and we listen to them to help arrive with a decision. And we saw a few times where we gave conditional approval and it kind of came back to haunt us. So there was changes on the plans, and he kind of reiterated that, hey, you can't keep giving conditional final with outstanding stuff. But I think in this case, his biggest problem was a written proof to the satisfaction of the town attorney's office. And it seems like, according to Rick, that's been satisfied. So I'm good with moving forward and we go on to the legal easement. Just one thing I got a question about the zoning board of approval that was given on January 6th. It said it was approved with a specific condition that the applicant submit a revised resume of operation that complies with the discussion of hours of operation, number of employees that complies with the comments. Can Mr. Mandelbaum clarify what that conditional approval was?
Yes, the zoning board just requested on that resume, which is their performance standards application, which frankly, most of the items don't really fit this use as much as it would for like a laboratory or a light manufacturing type use. But there were a couple of items that they wanted a little more detail on. So as a condition of their performance standard approval, they asked us to provide that detail, which we did by filing a revised performance standard resume with the town. I believe.
And what are the hours? Did they want to confirm the hours of operation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 24/7 operation as these typically are. And I think they just want a little more detail on how that breaks down, which we provided as far as the loading and when the packages come in and when they go out. So we clarified that, and that's on the information that they asked for.
All right, and they were satisfied with that. All right, that was my only question about that. And it looks like the traffic study came back, and they liked the revisions in the site. I thought AKRF was going to give a presentation tonight. I'm not sure if that's still in play, but it looks like they're satisfied any concerns with the traffic. So that's all I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McCory. Mr. Bond.
No, I have no issues. I'm okay with it. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this point, I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this application? Okay, one more time. Is anybody from the public wish to speak on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I see none at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, being I hear nobody from the public, I'll ask for a motion to close the public session.
Motion to close the public portion, Mr. Mandel.
Mr. Mandel makes the motion to close it.
Mr. Andrews, seconds.
Mr. Andrews seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposition. Okay, the public session is closed.
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder,
Yes.
we do have a representative from AKRF to speak to the board about their review and evaluation of the traffic study.
Okay, Marissa, I asked you before, you didn't say anything, so you would like to say something now?
Marissa, I'll make you a presenter.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt before. I wanted to see if the board had questions specific to traffic. I have a slide deck that walks you through their traffic study, depending on your level of concern with the traffic report, which I'm happy to share. It really is up to you. I can bring it up.
There you go.
But I can say what you've said to this point is correct. We signed off in our January memo of the traffic study, the late January memo, the earlier memo from January 13th. That memo signed off on the traffic study and left 2 outstanding site plan comments. And the applicant was very proactive in getting us back a revised site plan within 2 weeks that addressed both of our comments. And that's when we issued our second January memo, which signs off on the site plan. So I'll just really quickly, you've laid this out. We've provided 2 reviews. The first review, we requested a revised traffic study based on our round of comments. They provided that revised traffic study, which we signed off on. We then got a subsequent site plan, and we signed off on that as well. The proposed site, they've introduced that to you. What's key for us is that the proposed operations are primarily a small package delivery location with a ancillary secondary collection point for local business. They looked at 3 traffic study intersections. These 3 intersections are along the state route. They're the busiest intersections. They're very similar to what was analyzed for the Amazon facility as well. They've used the same data collection previously approved under the Amazon site, which was collected during appropriate times, and we concluded that that data was sufficient. For the no-build analysis, they applied the same background growth rate as the Amazon site, and they added traffic generated by the nearby projects. The original traffic study added Amazon, and then our response memo requested that they add in the 125 and 155 Greenbush Road, which they added in their revised TIS. We then concluded in our secondary memo that this no-build project was sufficient. There was some discussion about the trip generation. In this particular case, unlike, for instance, some of the sites you're looking at with 155 where you're using ICE, UPS is a very specific use. So they did provide a very detailed trip generation hourly throughout the entire day of vehicles going in and out. We do check that against the national average for warehouse facilities to make sure that it's in line. In this case, it's more conservative than the national standard for a general warehouse, which is what we would expect with a UPS or an Amazon or something of that nature. So it was good data. We did ask for some information about when people were coming in and out so we could kind of line it up along their 24-hour distribution. So as it was mentioned, they have a preload and then a delivery. The delivery is really what's going to start overlapping. The end of preload and the beginning of delivery are overlapping with your peak commuter hour in the AM. And then they've got a staggered returns with a little less drastic of the vehicles, and then a local sort with no operation overnight. One of the keys was that the ancillary package drop-off was part of our questions going into the final review. Had a conversation with the applicant's consultant right before we issued our final review, and the estimated and the goal of that site is not to be the UPS store that you think of, that you would go and buy boxes and send your Christmas presents, and that you would have a lot of residents that potentially would frequent. It's supposed to be a collection point for local business. And so they're only anticipating 25 customers per day. As long as that is the anticipated use and how they're going to operate the site, then their trip generation is sufficient. And that's what we found in our memo. They also gave you a 2026 analysis with some, a very minor nominal increase in traffic from 2021 to 2026 in regards to their site. And we just wanted to confirm why there was a second build year. Was the building going to be expanded? Was there going to be a secondary site plan? They've confirmed that it's really just that they anticipate being more efficient, and maybe they can hire a couple more employees or handle several more packages. So they've done conservatively a secondary analysis, but there shouldn't be anything happening in 2026 on site that's notably different than what's happening in 2021. They distributed the trips mostly from the north, with 3/4 from the north, 25% from the south. That's in line with the existing traffic, and it's in line with all the uses in the area. This use is very similar, so it should really follow the existing patterns. They analyzed it using all the latest methodology. We did ask them to revise it for the volume of trucks, the percentage of trucks that are now on this roadway that they're contributing to. And they did that for both the no build and build analysis. We also asked them to use the New York State DOT signal timing plans, which they revised for. What's key, I know you mentioned you didn't get a comment letter from State DOT. We review everything to State DOT guidance, and we actually spoke with DOT about the signal timing plans to get them. Unfortunately, that's not the person that issues the letter to you, which is why you still don't have a letter. But they were very kind in noting to us that the signals are operational there. They don't have any immediate concerns that need fixing. Amazon is already upgrading one of the intersections at, I believe, at Bradley Hill Road, that traffic signal slightly. And so the state was satisfied that they had what they needed to operate with this development as well on the operations perspective. It wasn't, to my knowledge, it has not fully gone through their permit division separately. We also asked for a crash assessment. This is standard on a state DOT roadway. It's standard that New York State DOT should have requested. Mainly, we just wanted it documented for you. Route 303 is a very crash-heavy corridor. Luckily, and luckily for the applicant, luckily at the moment, this is not one of the high accident locations along Route 303. I know it looks like a lot of crashes, but it's over 4 years, so it actually doesn't meet New York State DOT's criteria for a high accident location. But we want it documented, we want it noted in all of the studies so that you can keep being informed as to whether crashes are getting worse with added development over time. And then we review their site plan and the truck turning analysis, and these are the locations that we were concerned with. It wasn't so much that they were clipping the neighboring parking spaces, but particularly because the neighboring parking spaces to the 2 drive-in aisles had handicap spaces. We just wanted to make sure someone wasn't getting in their car when UPS truck was coming out that might have been dropping off a package. So they widened that and moved some of the parking spaces back. Also with their loading dock, they were extending the island in. Normally it's nice to have more islands. In this case, it was interfering with the truck turns. So they cut the island back, and then now their truck turns are not in conflict with the islands they were going to build. And that's what's shown here, that their revised plan that they bubbled in their resubmission to you on the 28th shows both of our improvements requests documented on their site plans that they'll incorporate. So our conclusions were that the traffic study was approved for our standards and New York State DOT standards that we follow, so long as the operations are as described, where you're not looking at a large UPS store where residents and others are coming very regularly for packages, and that there's no additional development on the site in 2026. So I don't know if there's any questions. That's all I have regarding our memos.
I can see Mr. Dell has a question.
Yes.
Let me go down.
1 second. Yeah, 1 second, Mr. Chairman. Marissa, can you stop sharing your screen so everyone can get the full view back?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Marissa. All right. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Let me go down to all the board members and see if anybody has any more questions for you. Mr. Young.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mandel.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sweeney.
No comments. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dell.
Yes, sir. Very nice presentation. I make similar presentations myself in conference papers for engineering conferences. And there's usually a difference between the PowerPoint, of course, and the actual paper. Do you have a more detailed report? Because I was looking for that and I couldn't find that anywhere.
Yes, our initial memo, which was dated December 8th, details all of the keys of their study and all of our recommendations for modifications. That was the very detailed review. Subsequent to that, they followed and addressed every one of our comments. So that's why the subsequent memos just basically sign off on it, because there was no additional outstanding comments that they didn't address.
Okay, because we've had traffic reports many times from consultants, et cetera, and usually they're a lot more detailed. You came out with, went over your PowerPoint. A lot of my questions were answered there. I looked at it beforehand, but it would be nice if we had a printed document we could then keep with the files that would have all these points in perpetuity in case, for example, that there might be another development happening nearby, or there might be something happening to this development in the future. So you didn't prepare such a document. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I just want to clarify, we didn't prepare a study. We prepared an assessment of their study. If we had prepared a study, it would look similar to theirs with the full documentation. I don't rerun their synchro analysis. I do work with a handful of consultants that I have to issue very detailed, this number is wrong, this number is wrong reports. I didn't have to do that here because this consultant didn't make those errors. So usually the detail of my report varies based on how much needs to be changed and how much I need to explain is wrong. In this case, it was really just differences of opinions and how to do the study, for instance.
Well, if that was articulated on a report, I certainly would appreciate it. I don't know how the other members feel, but your report is very excellent. Looks like you did an excellent job. But in terms of keeping the documentation of what exactly was said, it might be problematic just having to refer to the PowerPoint. I don't know how the other members feel, but that's my view on that. But thank you very much for a very nice presentation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Andrews?
Thank you very much, Marissa. It was a great presentation, answered all my questions that I had possible to ask you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. McCory?
All right, I have no questions with that was a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Bond?
No, I have no issues with the traffic study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Dell, you might want to check with Cheryl Coopersmith. She may have all that information you want in her file in the building department. If you give her a call tomorrow, she might be able to answer all those and give you that information. Your microphone.
Sorry, sir. Yes, I did talk to her about it yesterday, and it didn't appear that there was anything additional. It's just that it just is a matter of course. She came out with some excellent points, and the PowerPoint is great. And I would like to see some sort of report that takes the PowerPoint, explains it a little bit more, so we have some sort of hard document to keep with the file, in case there's a question of whether or not we did our due diligence. That's all, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, well, I got to open it up to the public again because we had more information. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this? On a traffic study? No? Okay, can I have a motion to close the public?
Mr. Andrews, motion to close the public portion.
Mr. Andrews makes the motion to close it. Mr. Sweeney seconds it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. I think if everybody is very happy with what the applicant has done and has answered everybody's questions, and if we do want to go ahead and move with a final on this, I'm asking, I think we should reaffirm CEQA on it. Do I have anybody who makes a motion to reaffirm CEQA? Nobody? We're not going to move forward with this?
Young proposes.
Mr. Young makes a motion.
Sweeney seconds. Sweeney seconds.
Okay, Sweeney seconds. All in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed? None. Okay, motion for neg deck.
Young.
Motion for neg deck, Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Young makes a motion for neg deck. Mr. Andrews second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None. Motion for final with conditions. Anybody?
I make a motion for final with the conditions, Mr. Sweeney.
Mr. Sweeney makes a motion for final with conditions. Do I have the conditions?
Andrew seconds.
Okay, conditions are Jane Slavin, February 8th letter. I don't know what we're going to do with Mr. Peters' February 9th letter. Ms. Slavin, do you have any recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, I can speak.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jane, I did not mean to step on your toes.
Go ahead. Will you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just make it a condition that they, you don't have to make the first one about the legal documents a condition because that's satisfied. Or you can make it a condition, I'm telling you, it's satisfied. As to the second one with redoing the plans with the piping and so on and so forth, I just require that that be done before final.
Okay, so you know what? Why don't we just leave both of them in? Because number one is already satisfied as it's the owner. They don't have to prove ownership from one another. Or do we just override that first one? Rick, what do you think on that one?
Yeah, as I say, it's only county planning that you have to override. Anyone else, you just don't make it a condition.
Okay, okay. So, all right, thank you. So Bruce Peters, February 9th letter, just the second comment. And we have Booker Engineering, November 10th. We have AKRF, January 13th, January 29th. We have SESI, January 28th. Rockland County Planning, September 22nd. And we had a letter from Orange and Rockland dated January 21st. Okay, I think that's it. Do I have a second?
Andrew seconds.
Mr. Andrews,
Mr. Chairman?
second. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, so, yes, go ahead, whomever.
All right, sorry, Mr. Dell here. Just a question as to how the board felt that we should have a slightly more formal letter, quasi-reported, et cetera, from AKRF for our files, because the information is there. It was excellent, but I think it needs to be centralized on one document, consisting also of the PowerPoint slides, and then the whole thing would be together. But if the other board members think that's an unreasonable demand, I will cede to their sentiments.
Well, let me ask you, Marissa, could you do that for us? Could you make a file up with what you have and send it over to Cheryl?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can write a summary that matches exactly what I said tonight. It's at your discretion.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Slavin.
Mr. Chairman, we do have the PowerPoint presentation. I did ask Marissa to forward that prior to the meeting. But yes, if the board wishes, then the summary could be submitted and we would include that with the PowerPoint.
If we could get that done, this way we have it on record, and if we ever need it, we do have it. Thank you very much. Okay, next is PB, what the heck is the number? PB 2106 800 Bradley Hill Road.
We didn't vote. We didn't never voted.
There was no vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
final 700.
Mr. Chairman, you never answered Mr. Dell's question about a formal letter, number one, on Bruce Peters.
In respect to what, Mr. Mandel?
Mr. Dell had asked that we get a formal letter from them as part of it, not just as part of the final.
Rick, do we, I don't understand what Mr. Dell wants. A formal letter?
Okay, let me go cross-talk to Mr. Mandel. Are you referring to the one about the AKRF, having that they agreed to their their suggestions as part of the map? Or are you referring to something from Bruce Peters?
Referring to something that Bruce Peters that you brought up. That's how I understood it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I think the chairman answered that. If he's going to take the entire number 2 of Bruce Peters' February 9th letter, I think that should answer most of the question. And I thought the least we should do, which is now certainly going to happen, is a table listing all the easements, etc. But I think it's been clarified by the subsequent information. But thank you very much, sir.
And just so we're clear, our understanding is that number 2 is a condition of site plan approval prior to issuance of a building permit.
Correct.
That was our understanding. We just want to make sure that's what Rick and I talked about.
What?
Yes. Yes. It is but one of the conditions that you satisfy all those.
Okay, that was just making sure we're talking about the same thing. Thank you.
Okay. Flavin, anything?
Mr. Mandel, number 1 of Bruce's letter, a letter was received and sent to Rick Picola.
Thank
which
you.
mentioned in the beginning. Yes, so that letter, number 1, has been addressed and will become part of the record. Number 2 is going to be a condition. And then the other letter that Mr. Dell was requesting is one from Marissa of AKRF summarizing her findings.
Correct.
Okay. Am I good, Mr. Dell? Did I get that right?
Yes, except for one minor thing. In Bruce Peters number 2, last 2 sentences, it says the applicant's engineer shall consider adding a table. It should say the applicant's engineer will add a table. So it's non-discretionary.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, the board can make the table a requirement versus an option.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mendenbaugh?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. And I'm still not sure if there was actually a vote.
We haven't finished yet. We're in the middle.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a vote from Mr. Young. Mr. Mandel?
That's a no. I think we're setting a bad precedent on it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Sweeney?
I'm a yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Dell?
It would be a reluctant yes, but I think we should go ahead with it. I think we've answered most of the questions, and hopefully Mr. Peters feels comfortable with what we're doing. So, aye.
Thank you very much. Mr. Andrews?
I'm good with it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. McCory?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Mr. Bond, we have a full board, so you won't vote. Okay, so we have a final on 700. Okay, now to PB 2106 800. There's no sense of doing a presentation because it's the exact same information. It's the exact same letters from our consultants. So does anybody from the board, Mr. Mandelbaum, do you have any presentation on 800, or it's the exact same presentation?
No, same presentation, Mr. Chairman. It's really just the parking on a portion of the 800 property, as Nicole described during her PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Open up to the board. Mr. Young, questions or comments on 800?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mandel, questions or comments on 800?
None. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sweeney, questions or comments on 800?
No comments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dell, questions or comments on 800?
Everything has been answered, assuming that we have almost an identical decision. I think there are no problems with proceeding. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Andrews, questions or comments?
No comments.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCory, questions or comments?
I have no comments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bond, questions or comments?
No, I'm good with it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open up to the public. Does anybody from the public wish to have any questions or comments on 800 Bradley Hill Road site plan improvement plan? Anybody from the public on 800 Bradley Hill? Okay, asking for a motion to close the public session.
Andrew's motion to close.
Session.
Mr. Sweeney makes a motion to close it. Mr. Andrews seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposition. Okay. I think we have to reaffirm CEQA. Make a motion for lead agent.
Motion for lead agent, Sweeney.
Mr. Sweeney makes a motion for lead agent. Do I have a second for lead agent?
Mr. Andrews seconds, lead agent.
Mr. Andrews second for lead agent. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No opposition. Okay. Motion for neg deck. Anybody want to make a motion for a neg deck?
Young makes the motion.
Motion for neg deck.
Mr. Andrews makes a motion for neg deck. Do I have a second for neg deck?
Young.
Mr. Young makes a motion for second on neg deck. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Okay. Again, I need a motion for a final with conditions. Do I have a motion?
Motion for final with conditions, Sweeney.
Mr. Sweeney makes a motion for final with condition, and the conditions are Jane Slavin, February 8th. Bruce Peters, February 9th, number 2. Booker Engineering, November 10th. Orange and Rockland, January 21st letter. Where are those other two? Don't leave, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. I have AKRF, January 13th and January 29th, and SI, January 28th. And that's all I have. Okay. Cheryl, anything else? Okay, Mr. Dell.
Yes, I just think we should also have the AKRF report also in this, so it's not just in one, that it's in both. And obviously that we change the number 2 of Bruce Peters to having it being optional, that it being a requirement for the table to be placed. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Cheryl, you got that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, okay, do I have a second on the final?
Second.
Mr. Young makes a motion or makes a second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, I'm gonna go down. Okay, any opposed?
Yeah, Mr. Mandel, based behind Mr. Peters, number 2, sets a bad precedent. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mandel opposes it. All other board members are in favor of it. Okay, thank you very much. You have your final on 800.
Thank you very much, Chairman, members of the board, and all the staff. We really appreciate your patience on this, and I wish everyone has a safe day every day. Take care.
Okay, I hope everybody else that was here, please, you guys stay safe and healthy. We want to see you back again. A lot of smiley faces and pleasant people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay. Next application is PB 21-08, 3 Tweed Boulevard. Is there anybody here from?
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, I don't see you. Oh, Kat, there you are. Okay.
Hi, this is Catherine Anders from Cool Pool.
Okay. You want to explain your project, please?
So we are seeking preliminary approval for a pool in the backyard of this address.
Alrighty. Okay, let me go through the consultants' reports. Okay, Jane Slavin, January 8th. Oh, by the way, Kathy, if you have any questions while I'm going through the consultants' reports, please, answer them for us, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, Jane Slavin, February 8th. She has 5 comments. Bruce Peters, January 9th. 9 comments. Booker Engineering, February 10th. The applicant has provided significant information to demonstrate that potential significant adverse impacts with respect to drainage can be mitigated. We therefore recommend that the drainage and the SESC plan for 3 Tweed Boulevard be approved for drainage subject to the above project comments, of which there are 4. Department of Planning, Rockland County, January 20th. They have 8. Rockland County Highway Department, January 11th. They have 3. County Sewer Department, District Number 1, February 5th. They have 2. I have a letter from Rockland County Planning Department dated January 13th, saying Orangetown Planning Board is designated as lead agent. And that's all I have. Cheryl, is there anything else?
That's it.
Okay, I think I heard nay, but I'm not sure. I heard a very light voice. Okay. Mr. Young, questions or comments on this?
Nothing really, Mr. Chairman. Just make sure that the perk tests are done this spring. As Mr. Peters states, drainage appears in order. That's all I had, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mandel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. The screening between the number 3 Tweed Boulevard and the property to the south, the Kilgore property, is the fencing and landscaping, the trees that are there currently, does that continue all the way down between the 2 properties?
It continues down, yes, all the way down the side lot line.
Okay, to the end of the pool on that. Okay.
Yes.
Now, is Mr. Pete, all right. Now, Mr. Peters in his DEME report, maybe you can answer it. Number 4, it says the proposed seepage pit states that it's a 1,000-gallon pit, but the notes in parentheses below the diagram states that it's a 2,586-gallon pit. I couldn't find where the 1,000 was, but can you clarify that at all?
Sure. So it says that the 1,000-gallon pit, that's the pit inside, the gravel that's all around it. So as shown as on the design, it has a capacity of 2,586 gallons, even though the inside container only holds 1,000 gallons. The outer perimeter drains hold the extra 1,586 gallons. So we'll address that on the site. He'll definitely clarify that.
Okay, that's
All
when
right.
the other drains are coming into it, in other words. All right.
Yep.
It's like a sump pump around the house. Okay. What's the dimensions of the patio?
Yeah, so they're not on, I guess they were not on the site plan because it says
No,
Jane Slavin's comments. It says
yeah, those are the ones that we asked for. Building
We're
department 2, 3, and 4.
in the patio to address the coverage of the existing seepage pit. It covers about half of it, so we're going shifting it maybe like 2 feet. So it won't be covering that. So we'll address that and the size of the patio on the plans.
And the size of the patio is?
I'd say roughly 1,000 square feet. If that, I mean, the pool is about 600 square feet, I believe. It's pretty small.
Are we taking down any trees there in order to build the pool?
No, we are not.
And is this, are you bringing any fill at this point to level out the area where the pool and the patio are going to be built?
Yes, probably. I know that on the site plan, they'll bring in, wood chips around the trees to protect them. We always, we bring in fill, but that's something that I guess the engineer will have to address.
Yes, because if you bring in fill, are they going to build a retaining wall of some sort to assist in leveling it out? Because that's a slope that goes down. I remember that property from when I was able, it was back there before the house was built. That takes a deep, it's a slope that goes down. Are they going to build any sort of retaining wall to keep the fill and whatever's there on level ground?
Well, definitely, yes. Any fill or anything that could possibly move during construction would be 100% contained.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about during construction. In other words, what I'm stating is this: where you're going to build the pool and the patio, the ground now is not level there, if I'm correct. And in order to level it, are we going to build a retaining wall on the east side of the property as it goes down the hill?
Yes.
And bring in fill? We are. Okay, so we don't have the plans now for the retaining wall or how much fill is going to be brought in. I think that's necessary in order to fully understand and look at the project.
You're correct, Mr. Mandel. There is no retaining wall indicated on the plan that was submitted. And it appears that the grading in the area is 482 and that the patio is at 482, and then it slopes off to the east of proposed pool location, but there is no retaining walls indicated.
Okay,
So
I'd
if
just
they
like
are
to have an
proposed-
answer if they'd like.
Yeah, so
Correct.
I Mr. Grable addressed that. About the retaining wall.
Okay, and how much fill is going to be brought in?
Yes,
Okay,
and
no
how
further questions this time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel. Okay, Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you. As usual, Mr. Mandel did a very thorough job and took my questions, so I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dell.
Thank you, sir. This is obviously in a critical environmental area. I need a little bit more detail supplied than what we have. I'm sort of uncomfortable with moving along. At a bare minimum, on the downhill slope, there should be a combination of both silt fence and staked hay bales. That's a common requirement that we have in these type of situations. And I would also like to hear what the other board members have to say. And Ms. Slavin, are you comfortable with moving this ahead with the amount of details provided?
Mr. Dell, I think that decision would be up to the board. I provided my comments, and again, there was no reference to a retaining wall. If there is a retaining wall that's proposed, the drawings should indicate that.
Okay, so it's basically not enough information at this time. There's some specific information that needs to be added. I would think that this should be kept as a continuation to get that information, but again, I want to defer to the other members of the board and anybody else who's in attendance.
Kathy, let me ask you one question.
Yes.
It doesn't show it, and the grading plan, it's very hard to read. Do you anticipate on putting any type of retaining wall east of the pool?
I mean, I can't speak if it's not on the plan. I'm not going to say that, yes, that we would, but if the engineer feels that it needs to be built, of course, 100%. He's never not built a wall if it's needed. So
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but do you understand what Mr. Dell is saying? In other words, right now, we don't know. In other words, that's a slope. It's a fairly gradual slope, and we would like to know what you guys anticipate on doing to maintain the pool, the slope area, and not to have any erosion. We don't have enough information and if you understand what I'm saying.
oh, I do.
Okay. All right. Well, keep that in the back of your mind, and let's go with the rest of the board members' comments, and we'll see where we're going. Okay, Mr. Andrews.
Yeah, I would be concerned about a retaining wall there too. The pool holds how many gallons of water? 15,000 gallons of water. That's a lot of water. It's a lot of weight. If it slopes off that much, I would seem to think that some type of retaining wall should be put in place. I hate to see that pool go down the hill. So
Okay.
We would too. Jeez.
Please, no comments right now, please. The public is not open yet. Elaine, please shut your microphone off. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Andrews, you done? Okay,
I'm done. Thank you.
okay. Mr. McCory.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I agree. The plans might be incomplete without some more information about that retaining wall that was picked up by Mr. Mandel. And also, I just want to, when the applicant comes back, there's on Jane's letter number 4, it's something I was interested in too. If we can get a landscaping plan that matches the pool build, because I think there was a plan that was already approved. And if we can see that on the new plans, along with how it looks with the pool, because I can't get from the new plans if it corresponds to the old landscaping plan. But that's my own concern. I think the plans might need some work. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bond.
Yeah, the applicant has to come in, determine whether there's a retaining wall needed or not. And if it is, we need to see the detail on it before we can move it forward. So.
Thank you very much, sir. Kathy, as you can hear, there is a lot of concern. There's a lot of information that you haven't provided. I would like you to consider asking for a continuation so that you can get to your architects and your consultants and give us all the information. There's too much information missing on this plan for us to move forward with it.
Okay. So I am asking for a continuation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, get a hold of Cheryl when you get everything done and get straightened out, and we'll get you on whatever plan, whatever meeting is available once you have all your information.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, next application is Henry Coffey Campground, PB 21-09.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think you asked if anybody wished to speak to this item. Maybe a 4 minute.
Is there anybody from the public thank you, Mr. Dell. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this project? I think Elaine was concerned that she was going to get flooded out. I don't know if she's still there or not. Okay, again, anybody from the public wish to speak on this? Okay.
I mean, if that lady is going, she'll be able to speak at the next meeting that they come before. And ask what she needs and get the answers from the
plans. Yeah, and then they'll be able to speak at that point, of course, no question about it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bond. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Brenner.
Good evening, everybody. How are we doing?
Good evening, sir.
Okay, this is a long project that's taken place. Actually, the thoughts of this project started actually in the year 2013. Meetings were held with the public, meetings were held with the county highway department, and we actually filed a building application on October 18th, 2019. We appeared before your board in December of 2019. We got the approvals. We went to Akabor. We got their approvals. We are now here for a final approval of this project. This is a project to help relieve flooding conditions which exist on Sickletown Road. I have my engineer here from Stantec, and I believe he'll go through the items for you. And we hope we can move it along because we'd like to build this project as soon as possible before camp season starts. You want to take it over, Troy?
Sure, I can. We received 3 comment letters, one from, or actually 4, one from Jane, which I think was pretty straightforward, that we have to receive any permits. We received the Brooker comment letter that granted their storm approval. So we received that today. And we received a comment letter from Bruce Peters that had a few kind of cleanup comments. So we're comfortable with those as well. And then we also received the county planning comment letter, which basically said to make sure all county agency comments have been addressed. So they have been addressed at this point. So I don't really have a presentation set up. I could bring up the plan if you want me to refresh you with the project, or if you have questions, I can put it back to the chairman.
Okay, well, let me go through the comments that we have, and I'll open it up to the board members, and you can, if they have questions, you can answer their questions.
Sounds good.
Okay. Office of Building, Zoning and Planning, Jane Slavin, February 8th. She has one comment. Bruce Peters, January 9th. He has 13 comments. Bruce Peters, January 9th. Drainage calculations have been provided that demonstrate potential significant impacts with respect to drainage have been mitigated. We therefore recommend that the Henry Kaufman Campground Site Plan, Sickletown Road drainage improvements be approved for drainage subject to the above project comments, of which there are 5. Rockland County Planning, January 20th. They have 8 comments. Okay, I have a letter from a Robert and Jacqueline Beers at 81 Sickletown Road. Regarding to the drainage of the Kaufman campgrounds, we have been flooded from the campgrounds since 1970 because of the runoff of wetlands that were made into ball fields, etc. Now that they are making a drainage retention pond, we should be included in that change. This is an environmental tragedy that has been occurring for many years. Okay, I have a letter from Rockland County Highway Department saying no comments at this time. I have Rockland County Drainage Agency. This is dated September 17th. This is the review process completed. Therefore, this permit application file is now closed. I have also, but there's some other letters that I got, but are not part of this, or they have been satisfied. One is from Rockland County Drainage, dated June 22nd. This is for 92Y and Camp 12 Trails.
That's a different project. It's not this project.
Yes, no, I understand that. I understand. I just got it. I just, that's all I have. Cheryl, anything else?
That's all we have.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to open it up to the board now. Mr. Young, questions or comments, sir?
Nothing at this time. I want to hear what the other board members and the public has to say about this.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mandel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two questions. Regarding the letter from Mr. Beers, he asked why that retention pond wasn't built all the way down along the property line with the campgrounds. Was there a reason for ending the pool partway along their property line?
Sure, I can address that. The Beers property is this property here on the south end of the basin. There's Army Corps wetlands that are in these areas here. So it was a combination of avoiding Army Corps engineer jurisdictional wetlands and disturbances, plus just the length of the basin itself. We have to make sure that it can dry out to meet the county health department's mosquito control permit requirements. And as you can see, you know, the basin, which kind of turns into a swale at this point, has quite a length to it already. It's several hundred feet. So that was the second reason. And then the third reason itself is we can only send so much water that's currently going to a culvert that crosses Sickletown Road in this location here where my hand is. We're taking water that currently goes here. We're sending it up to a different crossing on this county road in this location here. So we can only take so much water from one location to discharge to another location and still satisfy the county highway department's requirements. So for those reasons, we've maximized the basin as you see it here. And it captures runoff that runs from here onto the property. But also what you don't see on this map, part of the project is, well, actually you do see it here. We're installing drainage up in this location here, which is going to cut off a lot of this upper area here. So we're actually cutting off, I think it's more than 7 acres from running through the Beers property here. So this drainage right here will cut off runoff that currently comes down and through the property and directed into the storm basin and out this location here.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully I'll answer Mrs. Beers' questions on it. The second question I had was from Bruce Peters, Department of Environmental Management and Engineering, his number 4, where he talks about the spillway along the entrance road and the velocity of stormwater. Could you tell me what you plan to do to respond to his question there about redesigning of that spillway?
Yep, this is an emergency spillway, which under conditions up to a 9-inch rainstorm should never see any flow of water. The emergency spillway, the purpose of that is if there's a blockage of the main pipe network that discharges the water through the pipe system into the county street drainage system. So so this should hopefully never see a drop of water flow through it. However, as you can see, we show this, it's basically a riprap lined trapezoidal swale that comes to the edge of, this is the main access drive into the camp off of Sickletown Road. So what Bruce has asked for is to show a little more detail at this connection point. He feels like we don't show enough detail that this water, if it were to come through here, would actually run down through this property here. So he's asked for a little more detail here to extend the riprap and the contours to show that it, without a doubt, would be directed down the drive. Because that's the purpose of this, is to alleviate any flows, emergency flows, through a controlled manner, which would be down the paved driveway, which has an asphalt curb along it. So it would safely come down and flow into new catch basins we're putting here at the street. So it was kind of a detail that
Thank you very much.
Bruce focused on there. Yeah, we'll take care of that. That's an easy one.
Well, thank you very much for the explanation. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. I'm okay right now. I'm gonna wait until I hear what the rest of the board and what the public has to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Dell.
Yes, thank you, sir. I re-echo everything that Mr. Mandel, with his usual thoroughness, pointed out. My concern, though, is still with the De Beers property. Can you move the map so we could show the bottom where it intersects with them again?
Sure.
If my reading of this is correct, there still is at least a swale the length of the De Beers property, or almost the length of it, that feeds into this. Is that not true? Or am I wrong?
That's correct. That's right.
Okay, and what is the depth of that swale? Approximately what, about a foot and a half?
Well, it tapers to grade here. So this is probably at this starting point is about a 2-foot swale. And then it increases in depth as you go to 6 to 8 foot as you get into this area here. So the starting point, I would say, is about 2 foot in depth.
Right, so nothing could go over that into the De Beers property. Is that correct?
Correct. Right. This swale is pitched into the
Well,
basin.
since it is what it is, I don't see any problem in bringing it a little further down to that property line. Would that be a problem? Even if
it would be.
Something.
This is an Army Corps regulated water course in this area here. And one thing, so that's regulated for starters. And then secondly, we looked at trying to divert more water from this area into this location, but then we end up overwhelming the system and sending too much water to the county's pipe up here.
I sort of understand what you're saying, but an extra 15 or 20 feet, I don't think would do that unless there's extremely heavy sheet flow there during rainstorms.
Yeah, I think it's more, well, we can take a look at it, but you can see here from the contours.
Well, even like, let's say, throw like a little bit of a berm or something close to it or anything.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. But to be honest, right here is the Army Corps' jurisdiction right here.
No, I understand. Okay, whatever you could do.
We're pretty close.
Sure. And since we're keeping a record on this, if anyone else here is in attendance, there's always a lot of talk about the 100-year flood. But as I'm sure you know, and maybe not many other people do know, that a 100-year flood doesn't mean it happens once every 100 years. It means the odds of it happening in any year are 1 in 100. And there's a bit of that, and that's also being restudied. The other thing is zero net increase in runoff. That doesn't mean you're going to get any less water from a flood. It just means during the worst times, you're not going to get overwhelmed, but you're going to have more water coming through for a longer period of time than you would perhaps in another situation. I think you would agree with that, correct?
I'm not sure if I completely followed you.
Okay, it just has to do with the definition of a 100-year storm.
No, I agree with that. And in fact, I think I explained to the board at our last meeting a couple months ago that, in fact, DEC has updated their rainfall tables that we use for this because of, a 100-year storm, for example, in this area, maybe used to be a 7.5-inch rainstorm. Now it's 9.0 inches of rain. So it's a fact that rainfalls are becoming more intense and higher amounts of rainfall. So DEC's already accounted for that to a certain extent.
Okay.
And we'll see how long it takes them to update them again, basically.
Yeah, right. But rather than having it all run across as a flash flood, you just have what could be described as high water for a fairly long period of time. But that's
and that's the purpose of a detention basin is basically to capture the water, to hold it, and to send it out as like a smaller, orifice or pipe, which we're doing here. But in fact, instead of having a detention basin that lets it flow back through this location, we're actually redirecting it. So we're taking it one step further to send it in a different direction to a different
Right,
outlet.
well, that's what I was alluding to. And of
Right.
course, Peter's comments on the end of the riprap, I think is certainly very accurate. All right, well,
Yeah, I
thank
think that makes sense.
It looks like you've done a lot of work on it. It's certainly a lot further along than when it first came in. Thank you.
Yeah,
very
no, we're proud of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dell. Mr. Andrews.
I have nothing right now at this time. I want to see what the public has to say. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCory.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of comments. You know, it looks like a lot of work and a lot of experts have chimed in about this plan. But in a layman's kind of term, the flooding and the runoff issues to those neighbors, is this plan going to alleviate all those problems they had with the flooding?
It's not going to prevent them. No, it's going to hopefully lessen the frequency of those events and also the severity of them. Yeah, that's, you know,
all right.
The applicant, the campgrounds are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to build this basin for, you know, unrelated to any of the other applications and the other projects that we're doing on the camp. And so we want to make this as effective as we can, but you know, in a situation like this, you have certain constraints. You know, when you have property that's landlocked by residential properties, things like that, and plus the other constraints on the property, including Army Corps wetlands and just areas, you know, to use while also balancing, you know, maintaining wooded buffers to the neighbors and things like that. So, you know, one thing that I did before we submitted this last time in December for this meeting, I met with the engineer from Brooker to review this in detail with him to basically explain to him all the different alternatives that we looked at, you know, and we explained that last presentation to the board that, you know, we looked at other areas of the camp to put basins. You know, we looked at other kind of cutoff techniques. We looked at, you know, quite a few different alternatives. And so I reviewed those again with the Brooker engineer who reviews the storm. And I think he agrees that, you know, basically we're doing the best that we can here based on all the constraints, you know, leveled against us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
You're welcome.
And just a last thing, you have no issues with Bruce Peters' 13 comments?
No, I call those cleanup comments. There's nothing serious technically with any of those comments. It's a lot of just cleanup as we discussed, you know, just cleaning up little details like this, things like that. We're comfortable with those comments.
All right. I just wanted to clarify because you said in number 4, he was asking for more detail. I just read it as the design of the spillway exhaust shall be revised to eliminate the possibility of emergency overflow. Are you doing a revision of the plan?
Just a minor, that's what we were just discussed over in this area here. He's talking about this area here. So we're going to show the riprap extended right to the edge of the road and make sure the contours show that the water is going to go down the drive. I mean, you know, so that's a little detail right there. It's not a change to anything else here.
The plans are going to change a little bit, but it won't affect the overall design.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right. That's my only comments. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Bond.
I know Cheryl had forwarded us a picture of what it looked like to me was the entrance road from Sickletown Road. And on the right side of that entrance road, it showed there was a ditch there. And the picture had that ditch, it looked like a river running down it right onto Sickletown Road. So is what you're proposing, is that going to eliminate something like that from happening, or is that still going to happen?
Your microphone's off.
That
That's on.
Thank you. Not the first time I've done that.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So I pulled up one of the photos here that shows that ditch along the driveway and the
There's a
water
pretty
out on the street.
substantial runoff going down that ditch, and it looks like it has a 2x10 that runs along the driveway.
Right, which is actually doing a pretty darn good job, to be honest.
It's contained, but I mean, but that's a ridiculous runoff from that down that.
Right. So the basin
piped will happen. What's the deal with that?
Well, this is part of the issue, and one of the alternatives that we looked at. We actually met with the county highway because the water goes into a corrugated metal pipe here to a catch basin, but doesn't go across the street here. It makes a left and goes north a couple 100 feet, and then makes a right and goes underneath the road. So we had approached the. So you can see that I think this water isn't overflowing the boards or the pipe in this situation. It's surcharging out the rim of the catch basin on the street and causing this flooding here. So part of the problem is that the piping system on the street is not large enough to carry the water. So that you have a restriction on the street, which causes water to back up and causes problems for this water to get into the system, but then also pops out the rim of the catch basin and floods the road. We approached the county about that as an alternative to increase the size of the piping of their street drainage to reduce that restriction. And we got a no on that one. Apparently, because this property across the street is the property that the reservoir is on, and it's a water supply, that they're restricted on changing any of the crossings that discharge water onto that property. So we could not include that in any of our proposed work here. But it is, you're right, it's a pretty dramatic photo for sure.
So that's going to continue. I mean, there's no way to pipe that along the driveway and the neighbor's property. I mean, I get it, it's still going to run out the street if the county won't cooperate, but
right. We did not pursue improvements on any of the neighbors' properties, such as piping this.
Yeah, because I mean, that's like a river running down that thing. I mean, I don't know where that picture was. I mean, that was a river running down that road.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of flow for sure.
Yeah.
So our storm basin is going to reduce that.
Is that some of that upper drainage you were talking about?
Right, some of the upper drainage that's being cut off, but also the area that's right adjacent to the basin and to the Beer's backyard and the other's backyard is a wooded area that really has no ground cover on it. So the water sheet flows right from, even though it's wooded, there's no grass or anything on it. So there's a tremendous amount of water that sheet flows off of that kind of bare soil into the backyard and into this water course ditch here. So that's all going to be cut off from contributing to this flow here. So we're cutting off upper parts of the camp, and we're also cutting off areas directly behind the properties with that swale and the basin.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public. Does anybody from the public wish to speak on this project?
I would like to speak.
Yes, sir. State your name and your address, please.
Kevin McCormack, 83 Sickletown Road in Orangeburg.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, I appreciate that Mr. Bond brought up this photo, and just so you're aware too, a couple of things. The water flow you see there is probably minor compared to what we have seen there. I mean, that would be a typical of a 2 or 3 inch rainstorm at most, maybe even an inch or 2 at this point. We've had times where that whole entire road was completely covered with water in that whole area of the picture. So that's not nearly the worst it's ever been, and it very regularly gets this much, to the point where that much water is flowing across the road. it's not just the catch basin at the end there, as far as it not capturing everything. And more importantly, I'm not a drainage expert, and I appreciate all the professionalism and work that Troy has done on this. But almost all the water that comes through that drainage ditch does not come from drainage from the properties. That comes from up above on the campground, and that area flows through and collects all that water. So I personally don't think that any of this drainage improvement is going to impact what comes through that drainage ditch. Just my opinion from my observations of the last 12 years that we've lived here. But just one other comment on the drainage basin itself. I had written questions. I have a bunch of questions. So if Troy or somebody wants to answer them at the end, that's fine. But in regards to the little swale that goes behind the Beers property, can Troy maybe explain how the water is actually going to flow through that? Because that's an uphill angle, the way that flows. So I would like to clarify what direction that water is going to flow in as it goes down. More importantly, this isn't in Troy's paperwork here, but in the paperwork that was provided with the agenda today, I went through that, and there were two documents, two PDFs, which showed the tree removal for the basin project. And on page 4 of the first document, it kind of lists all the trees that are there and what trees are going to be removed. One question that we had was, it doesn't appear to have all the trees that are along our property on it. It just seems to have trees that are close to where the basin is going to be. We wanted to clarify that the trees that are closer to our property line just weren't surveyed there or not. But more importantly, there's a whole significant number of trees that are going to be removed where the basin is behind the properties for the Tito property, the McCormack property, and the Beers property. I didn't count, but it's at least 25 to 50 trees, if not more, that are going to be removed. But yet there's no trees that are going to be planted behind those properties. So if we're going to remove that many trees, then we would request and require that some trees be planted there to, continue the look of the back of our properties, because there's only a couple of trees right in the corner of the Tito property. I think 1 or 2 that are going to be planted. So I think that those were the biggest concerns that we had. And then one other question in regards to, which I think this actually is a good thing, but Troy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the drainage that you talked about that was added kind of going up on the north part there that was collecting, I think you said 7 or 20 acres off the top there. How could you explain the number of acres that are draining into this area, and how much has that changed the amount that's going to be draining into the properties below the basin? Because that seems like a significant change from what we've seen before. So I think those were all my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Troy, could you answer some of those questions for those gentlemen?
Sure can. First one was concern that this swell is flowing uphill, but it's not. The town engineer required a profile through the basin, and this is all graded a minimum of 2% to the north. So that's the answer to that question. The second question was regarding the trees. So the town's ordinance requires us to survey trees of 8 inches and larger that will be removed. So we did not survey all of the trees. For instance, in this area here, we focused on just the limits of disturbance that would be impacted by the project. So there are certainly more trees in these areas that you can see my hand in right here. So these circles are existing trees that were surveyed that are 8 inches or larger caliber. And these darker symbols are the proposed plants that we're proposing as part of this project. And I can show you the types. So we're planting ash trees, birch trees, beech trees, cherry trees, chestnuts, pines, poplar, maple, oak, tulip, and sycamore trees. So all these are trees that are proposed. We focused them on the upslope area as well as on the downslope areas, thinking those would be the most effective places for these trees. We're not allowed per DEC requirements to plant trees within the basin. And we cannot plant them directly on top of the berm because that's used for access for maintenance. So we have trees planted on the side of the berm and on the side slope going up to the top here. So we have 70 trees are proposed to replace the trees that we're removing. The other questions?
Excuse me, Troy.
Sure.
Troy, could you maybe bring up the other document that shows all the trees that are going to be removed?
Sure, that would be our existing conditions.
That's number one of the two.
Yep. Let me grab that. Okay, so this is the removals plan. All these with the X's are the trees to be removed. And then you can see the lighter ones are existing trees that were 8 inches or larger.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Roughly how many trees are going to be removed?
Approximately 130 trees.
Okay. And how many are you going to be replacing? What?
70.
70.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you can because is there any way that you can do any additional planting in the area between the catch basin and the property owners to the side?
Sometimes we'll put a note on the plan if the town's okay with it that we can adjust the locations of the trees, to be strategic, based on view sheds. I mean, there are existing tree areas within the properties of the neighbors. And of course, we're trying to preserve as much as we can on our property as well. But we've done that before where we can work with the neighbors, if a tree is shown here and it works better, move, over here, we can do that, but again, within the area of the basin itself, we're limited to grasses and things like that. So if the board would like that, I don't think that would be a problem. Maybe Don can give his opinion on that. We've done that before.
Okay.
We've worked with the neighbors as to where they would think the trees would be advantageous for them.
Yeah, and to be honest, we've had a pretty good relationship with the neighbors. We've had a couple neighbor meetings that we reviewed the design. We've modified the design based on input, and I think we came up with a nice balance of a plan that helps to mitigate the drainage issues, but also maintains buffers. Akabor approved the plan with the tree removals and the plantings. So we're feel pretty good about it, and we're willing to make some adjustments to locations and things like that.
All right. Thank you very much.
I have a question, Mr. Andrews here.
Yes, Mr. Andrews, go ahead.
Can I ask why or how many ash trees do you propose putting in? I saw it on the list, but I didn't see a number of how many.
Now you're testing me. I don't know if I have it. I might have to do some counting quick here.
The reason why I'm asking is because ash trees now have a disease, and I don't think the disease that they have right now is under control. And a lot of ash trees are dying off. So,
is this local to Rockland County, or is it?
No, all over the state. It's in the states, in Pennsylvania, it's in New Jersey, it's all over.
Okay.
Ash trees have a tendency to get a disease and they die off. Now, I'm not sure, if they'll die off when they're young. But then again, if they're gonna become mature, and that's what the hopes are, it's a possibility that they could die off if there's nothing done about the disease that they get. And the other question is,
I'm sorry.
I noticed there's a lot of deciduous trees that you're gonna plant as opposed to any evergreens, which
Well,
would actually act as a good buffer between the neighbors.
Right. Our landscape architect designed this, so I would have to ask her about the ash tree. Just looking at the symbols, though, I'm not seeing too many because the symbol for the ashes was just a single A, I think. So I don't know.
Well, if it's a problem, we can always substitute them. We could substitute if the supplier of the ash tree is in agreement that they would about this disease. There's no reason why they can't be replaced.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke, actually. I apologize for that. These trees are the trees to be removed. I apologize for that. These are the proposed trees up here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I apologize for that. That was my mistake. So we have the tulip tree, the white spruce, eastern white pines, white oak, chestnut oak, and the silver linden.
Okay. All right.
All right.
That looks much better.
So no ash tree. So I guess that helps me out that I made that mistake.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Troy.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody else from the public that wish to speak on this project? One more time. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this project? Okay, can I have a motion to close the public session?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Motion to close.
Kevin, you've already spoken. I'm sorry, sir. Thank you.
But they didn't answer the question.
Motion to
I'm
close
sorry.
public portion.
Okay, who made that motion?
Mr. Mandel.
Mr. Mandel made a motion to close the public session. Do I have a second?
Andrew seconds.
Andrew second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. I believe that the applicant has done an excellent job on this. I think we can move on with this. Can I have a motion for lead agent to reaffirm CEQA?
Motion for lead agent.
Okay, Mr. Mandel, do I have a second?
Andrew seconds.
Andrew second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
None. Okay, thank you. Motion for lead, neg deck?
Motion for lead neg deck.
Okay, do I have a second?
Andrew seconds.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None.
Aye.
Okay. Troy, could you do me a favor? Take down your, thank you very much. Okay. Can I have a motion for final with conditions?
Motion for final with conditions.
Mr. Mandel, thank you, sir. Okay, Jane Slavin, January 8th, 1. Bruce Peters, January 9th, has 13. Booker Engineering, January 9th, has 5. Rockland County Planning, January 20th, has 8. That's all I have. Cheryl, is there anything else?
I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right,
Okay, do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brenner?
yes, I have another request maybe we could incorporate into this situation. This is February. It's moving very, very rapidly. Before you know it, it's going to be March 31st. It takes time for drawings to get finalized and filed and everything else. And we now are coming into the bat season where the DEC says you cannot remove certain trees from April 1st to October 31st. We believe that the construction of this basin is critical. It's going to help everybody. It's going to help the neighbors. It's going to help everybody. And you can see it's going to work. I am requesting that we only take the trees down. We are going to keep the stumps, so we are not going to create an environmental situation where we can have silt coming on or something like that. I'm asking permission to just take the trees down. And that may also be of interest to the neighbors because they'll see what's coming down and where we can plant the new trees. And we've done this before where I'm asking permission from the planning board to just take the trees down, not the stumps. I would like that if you could put that in your condition.
Okay, let me poll the board on that. Mr. Young. Mr. Brennan with
No
Mike.
objection, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mandel.
Yes, I concur with the request.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Sweeney. Somebody's got their mic open and they're flooding everything. Mr. Dell, okay, thank you. Mr. Sweeney. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Dell.
Yes, but again, I think we should add a sentence in there to our decision where they said they would try to extend the swale along the Debir.
I'm okay with that.
Well, Mr. Dell, I think he had a problem because if he tries to extend that swale,
I'm
it's
okay.
on Army Corps of Engineers property jurisdiction, and that they would have to go through a
I
whole.
said, but up to it. And I think he thought he had no problem with that.
Okay. We can add that in, no problem. Troy, are you okay with that? Mr. Brenner, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine. I just have to check with our wetland biologist for the project to see how close we can get to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay,
Sure.
Going back to the trees, Mr. Dell, about the trees.
I have no problem.
Thank you very much. Mr. Andrews.
I'm good with it.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. McCory.
I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bond.
I have no problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brenner, you can take your trees down, but do not remove the stumps, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, where were we?
So you're looking for a second for final.
Yes, we had the final, asking for a second for final with that added condition that they could take the trees down and that they will try to extend that one swale up to Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction. And that the applicant has agreed to do that if possible. Okay, so I need a second.
Andrew,
second. Okay, Mr. Andrews, second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, Mr. Brenner, you got it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let everybody be healthy. We're getting there.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Wait, who opposed that? Did someone oppose?
Cheryl, I don't think anybody opposed.
I believe so.
Someone opposed? Okay, fine.
Okay. Okay, do we have any other business?
At the January 13th decisions.
Okay. The only ones that I had one comment is a question of that I had left the meeting and that just to make that notation.
I got it.
Okay, is there anything else? Ms. Slavin, any other business?
No, just that wonderful meeting. Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we all did a good job. The
Do
board
we need to vote on the minutes?
great meeting for everybody. All right.
Vote on the minutes?
Yes, we have to vote on the minutes.
Oh, okay. All in
Motion
favor of
to approve minutes.
adopting the January, I think, 13th meeting minutes and whatever changes were done on it. All in favor? Well, we asked for a motion to accept. Who makes the motion to adopt it?
Motion, Mr. Mandel.
Who seconds it? Mr. Sweeney seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any op?
Aye.
Okay, no opposition. You got it, Cheryl.
Okay, thank you.
Need a motion to close the meeting. Mr. Mandel makes the motion. Mr. Sweeney seconds. All in favor? Aye. Guys, listen, guys and ladies, everybody be healthy, safe. You and your families. All right.